Hey guys, I wanted to share with you today a highlight from my last podcast episode. So episode 125 of the Hardcore Self-Help Podcast. Basically, most weeks I go through and answer 3 different questions about mental health or life, psychology, things like that. Ignore Leo in the background playing with toys, please. Somebody last week wrote in a really good question about needing mental health support, but they don't have a lot of money, they don't have insurance, and they're having trouble finding services. So in this answer, I talk about different resources that are available and different options for getting help when you don't have a lot of money or don't have insurance. You can find the whole episode on iTunes or Android, Google Play, all those different podcast collectors. You could also go to my website, duffthepsych.com/episode 125. So episode 125, and that'll take you to a place where you can see all the show notes. Silly boy. You can see the show notes. You can, there's a little player so you can listen to the episode and all of that. So enjoy this response. And there are definitely 2 other really good questions on the episode. So I definitely suggest you check out the whole episode. Take care. Okay, so first one's a little bit of a heavy one, and I do need to give kind of a content warning. I guess I don't always do this, but there's a little bit of suicidal talk in here, so just be aware of that. Hi, Dr. Duff. I clinically don't know what I'm suffering from, but I believe it to be depression and PTSD. 2 years ago, I was hospitalized for having suicidal thoughts and was referred to a therapist and a psychologist, and I was going to them for about 2 months. I think that might have meant therapist and psychiatrist, not totally sure. And I was going to them for about 2 months, but the cost of going was too much, so I stopped. Now, recent events have cost me my job and lost me my car because I was having traumatic flashbacks and had an accident. Talking to friends and family has helped a little bit along the way, but it hasn't stopped me from getting regular sleep. I think irregular sleep is what they meant, and traumatic flashbacks. Not eating, and now I've developed a habit of cutting myself and hurting myself just to get me through the day and the thoughts out of my head. I've tried researching doctors and called them, but with no insurance, it's really hard to get one. I really don't want to die, but the thought of it seems to be the only solution to a permanent fix. Thank you, and keep up the great work that you do. So first off, I'm glad that you wrote in, and I'm glad that you are alive in order to write into the show. I'm really happy to hear that, at least at the time of writing this, you're still around. That's good. It's super unfortunate and shitty that you've had to go through so much and that you've been suffering as much as you have. And I really hope that, the combination of any of the tips that I have for you today and just, your luck changing really works out for you. It does sound like you are experiencing PTSD, or at least some form of traumatic reaction. There are different forms of kind of traumatic reactions. PTSD is the most well-known one, and it does sound a lot like what you're experiencing. Some of the cardinal symptoms of PTSD are flashbacks, which are vivid memories where it's like you're re-experiencing the traumatic event that happened to you all over again. So you may really, really feel like you're there. You have vivid senses that come along with what happened, and it's a really, really troubling and uncomfortable experience. They can often be triggered by cues in your environment. So if you have a certain sense that's attached to that memory, like a certain location or smell or something like that, encountering that in your everyday life may cause you to go into one of those re-experiencing vivid flashbacks. Other things are you may be on edge or easily startled, depressed, or even angry. Some people become depressed and isolated. Other people become very angry and agitated and kind of pushing against other people. These are all common parts of the traumatic reaction. So that's not to diagnose you, but to say that, your hunch may be correct here. And you're absolutely at a level that is what I would consider, clinically concerning, right? Meaning you are somebody who probably should be getting treatment with the level of symptoms that you're having. And our goal here should really be to try to connect you to resources and services to get you help. Because the current path that you're on, I absolutely believe that it's probably the best you could do right now, but it's not sustainable. It's not going to keep you alive forever. It's not going to work forever. I did want to mention just to the audience why somebody in your position might start cutting or self-injuring. The purpose behind self-injury and cutting is different for everybody, but commonly it is a way of coping with overwhelming emotion. For some people, it gives a sense of sort of momentary clarity and sometimes a euphoria. And the only thing in that moment that you can really focus on is the sensation of that self-harm. So it sort of gets you out of your head. And for some people, it can also be a form of control, sort of like drawing a line in the sand and just reclaiming some control over what happens to your body. I don't judge you for cutting. And, I understand why you may have approached that and used that as a tool. It is a coping tool, but it's not an effective one. And I want you to stop when it's possible for you to do so, because it's not sustainable. It's something that it doesn't solve anything for you. It gives you a momentary sense of relief, but it's not something that gives you long-term relief. And there's a really high risk of accidentally harming yourself seriously, doing heavy damage to your body, including accidentally killing yourself. There are people that do that. So it's something that is not safe to be doing. And again, like I said, I get it and I don't judge you, but it's not something that I would want you to continue doing. So let's actually address your question here, right? So how do you get help when you don't have a job, insurance, etc.? Some of this is definitely going to depend on where you live and what the resources are in your area. I have no idea where you're from. So I'm not sure if you're in America or another country, another continent, what have you. But I'll kind of talk in general about what I'm familiar with, which is in the United States. In the United States, a lot of counties have local mental health resources. So if you were in my area, I'd be trying to connect you with county mental health. They may be called mental health, they may be called behavioral health, but the county or the region that you live in may have public mental health resources that are available. And in general, these are low cost or free depending on somebody's particular financial need. And the good thing about these sort of community agencies is they're often capable of dealing with higher risk cases, which you are sort of in that territory. So you're not just somebody who has kind of mild generalized anxiety or something like that, where they're totally worthy of getting help, but they're not going to be in an active, immediate crisis if they don't get help right away. You're not really in that camp. You're in a little bit more of a risky territory where you've tried some things haven't worked out for you, you're feeling hopeless, you're feeling like suicide may actually be an option. So you're kind of in a different category here. But what you can do is you can just Google, go to Google or whatever search, and just put in the county or town that you live in, and then mental health or behavioral health. And that should pop up what the local resources are. That's one option. They will have a variety of things. They will have classes, groups, individual help. Oftentimes they have sort of wraparound services that help you to connect to other community resources. You'll often be working with social workers who are licensed to do therapy, but also skilled in connecting you to other resources in the community to help you get back on track. So that may be something that you could definitely look into. The other thing would be that you could look into sliding scale therapists. So a sliding scale means that if a therapist takes a sliding scale, that means that their fee varies depending on how much money you make or don't make. So depending on your income level, they will charge a different rate. And so for people that have very, very limited or no income, you're going to be paying a very small rate, or sometimes even being able to go for free. So again, much like the other one, you could Google sliding scale therapists near whatever your city or zip code is. Just put in enough information so Google knows where you're looking. Unfortunately, at least when I looked recently on Psychology Today, which is usually what I direct people to for finding therapists, the website there, their search engine, I don't think, has an option to filter by sliding scale, but you could Google that, or you can just look on Psychology Today or whatever your local Psychologist Association website is, and then contact people individually and ask them if they do sliding scales, or look at their website. A lot of times therapists will have on their website whether they do a sliding scale or not. So that's something you could look into, and I do want to reassure you that if you get somebody who has a sliding scale and you end up paying very little for therapy, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be getting good therapy. That's just something that we're encouraged to do. As psychologists, at least, we are encouraged to give low cost or free resources when possible as part of our ethical code. And so there will be people that do that. And generally the thought is, they're going to have some full price clients as well that are uninsured, but or they don't use insurance, but they pay fully out of pocket, and that helps to offset things financially. The last one that I'll mention, which may or may not be appropriate for you, is universities. So when we are going through graduate school, whether that's master's or doctoral level, and training to be a therapist or a psychologist, we have to go through some practicums where we actually see clients for therapy, but we're not officially licensed yet. We're seeing them under somebody else's license, and we're getting supervision on the work that we do as part of our training. And so in most areas, there will be universities where people are going through the same kind of training, and they will provide services for students and often people in the community for very cheap or sometimes free. Now, what I would say is that for you, you do have strong symptoms and you have this active traumatic reaction, self-harm, some of the things that are kind of red flags. And in some cases, that may be a little too intense for the people that are in the training program, or they may not take clients like that in that clinic because it's not within the scope of what they can do. But even if that is the case, you don't need to make that assumption. What you would want to do is call and ask. And if they can't help you, they should have a list of resources in the area that they could refer you to, right? So even if they can't help you directly, they should know who in the area could. And then, of course, in addition to all of this, getting the direct professional help, you could check out, online resources, things like, 7 Cups, which is a site where you can get professional or peer support, peer-to-peer support online. You just want to be trying to pump in as much positivity, self-help, knowledge, all of that you can in the context of what you're going through. I really do think you need professional help. These are things that are in addition to that. And then, of course, if you're actively suicidal, meaning you're intending to kill yourself, you have a way to do so, it's likely that it may happen. You can just call your local emergency number, 911 or whatever it is, or simply go into the hospital. You can call 911, whatever the emergency number is, or take yourself to an ER. And, in this case, even if you're involuntarily hospitalized, they can help you get the ball rolling in the right direction. And I know that you've been hospitalized before, and that may not sound like an attractive, not offer, but like an attractive option. Still, we're talking about either you're dead forever, or there's a chance that you can live a life that's more satisfying to you and is more comfortable. I'm not going to tell you that things are going to get better. I'm not going to say that you're definitely going to get better. Things will be moving up from here. But I can say that you have the capacity to get better, right? You have the possibility of getting better. And with some effort on your part and connecting to the right resources, it's totally possible that you can pull out of this. Anytime somebody writes a question like this to me, I'm hopeful because you're writing for a reason, right? At least a part of you doesn't want to die, and a part of you really feels like you maybe could get some good information out of this. So hold on to that part, kind of breathe some life into that, and just try your best. I really, really think that you can do it. So thank you for writing that question, and to everybody who is listening. Hopefully this is something that might shed some light on your experience, or at the very least give you some perspective on what things are like for others.